The man behind the wheel, it was a cold Monday morning in San Francisco. The sky was painted with gray clouds, and the streets were still damp from the night's rain. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, stepped out of his apartment and into the black sedan waiting at the curb. He nodded politely at the driver, a quiet man in his early 50s with kind eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. "Good morning." "Raj," Sundar said, settling into the back seat. "Good morning, sir," Raj replied, softly, adjusting the rearview mirror. His voice had warmth, but also a heaviness, like a song that had forgotten its last verse. They had taken the same route to Google's Mountain View headquarters for over 3 months now. But today, something felt different. Sundar noticed Raj's hands were trembling slightly on the steering wheel. His knuckles were pale, and his eyes looked red, as if he hadn't slept normally. Sundar didn't pry. He respected boundaries. But today, something in Raj's silence felt too loud to ignore. "Are you all right?" Sundar asked, keeping his tone gentle. Raj hesitated. "Just a bit tired, sir. Nothing to worry about." Sundar nodded slowly, sensing there was more behind those words. He opened his laptop and started checking emails, but he kept glancing up at the rearview mirror. Raj's eyes weren't just tired, they were holding back something deeper. By the time they arrived at the campus, Sundar had made up his mind. He would find out more, not because he was curious, but because he cared. The day passed in a blur of meetings and presentations. Even as Sundar stood in front of hundreds of engineers discussing the future of AI, his thoughts kept drifting back to the man behind the wheel. That evening, as the car pulled up outside his building, Sundar lingered. "Thank you, Raj," he said, then paused. "Do you have a place nearby?" "You're always early." Raj's hand stiffened slightly. He looked back through the rearview mirror, then away. "I just stay close, sir. Saves time." Sundar nodded again, but this time he didn't let it go. "Close? Like a hotel?" Raj didn't answer right away. He reached for the gear shift, but Sundar gently touched his shoulder. "Raj, please. If there's something going on, I want to know." Raj took a long breath, and for the first time, Sundar saw the truth flicker in his driver's eyes. "I sleep in the car, sir," Raj said quietly. "I haven't had a home in 7 months." Sundar's breath caught. He looked around the luxury sedan, its seats wrapped in leather, the smell of pine air freshener still lingering. It was spotless, neat, as if Raj had made it into a home without walls. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Sundar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Raj looked out at the street. "Pride, maybe, or shame. I didn't want people to see me as weak. This job, it's all I have left." There was silence, not the kind that comes from awkwardness, but the kind that comes from truth landing like a stone in still water. "Where do you shower?" Sundar asked gently. "Gym membership," Raj replied with a small smile. $20 a month. "I keep clean. I keep working. I survive." Sundar sat back, overwhelmed by the simplicity of Raj's resilience. This man had been driving him daily, never late, never complaining, never showing even a hint of struggle. And yet, every night, he curled up in the front seat of the car and called it home. As Sundar stepped out of the vehicle that night, the air felt heavier. He looked back at Raj, who gave him a small wave before pulling away into the darkness. But Sundar didn't go inside. He stood on the curb for a long time, watching the taillights fade, feeling something shift inside him. This wasn't just about charity. It was about respect. It was about a man who had lost everything but never stopped showing up. And tomorrow, Sundar knew things would begin to change, but he didn't know yet how far it would go. He didn't know the truth about Raj's past, and he didn't know that someone else was watching them, someone who wasn't happy about what was coming next. Secrets. In the silence, that morning came quietly, but the air held a strange weight. Outside Sundar's apartment, the familiar black sedan waited, parked in the same spot it had for weeks. The windshield sparkled with dew, and the street was just beginning to stir with life. Coffee vendors setting up stands, dogs pulling impatiently at their leashes, and early commuters rushing by in a blur. Inside the car, Raj sat perfectly still. His hands rested on the wheel, not trembling today, just steady and silent. But his eyes stared forward without focus, lost in the distance. The events of the night before played over in his mind like an old film reel, skipping, repeating, refusing. To fade Dot, he had told Sundar the truth. For months, he had kept it buried beneath politeness and punctuality. He had smiled through exhaustion, shaved in gas station bathrooms, and found warmth beneath piles of worn jackets in the back seat of the very car he used to drive tech billionaires across the city. And now the most powerful man he'd ever worked. For Nu, he didn't regret telling him, but he didn't feel safe either when Sundar opened the door and stepped into the car. He gave a soft good morning that hung in the air like a question. Raj offered a small nod in response. The usual quiet comfort between them had shifted. This silence wasn't calm anymore. It was cautious that Sundar didn't open his laptop. He didn't check emails or take calls. Instead, he just looked out the window, watching buildings and bridges pass. All while his mind ran faster than the car could ever drive. He kept replaying Raj's words from last night. The gym showers, the $20 membership. The way he had said this job is all. I have left with a voice that carried not just sadness, but silent pride. Sundar had met CEOs who spoke on stages and called themselves resilient. But in Raj, he had seen the real thing. He remembered how clean the car always was, how Raj never missed a day, how he always asked, "Do you need to wait?" at the end of each drop-off, not because it was required, but because he cared. And now, knowing what he knew, Sundar felt something deep and sharp stir inside him, a mix of shame for not noticing earlier, and a deep desire to do something about it got when they reached the Google campus. Sundar didn't get out right away. "Raj," he said, gently, "do you have any family?" The question hung in the air. Raj hesitated, then gave a slow sigh. "Not anymore," he said. "My wife passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. And my daughter stopped talking to me after that." "She blamed me? Blamed you?" Sundar asked. Surprised. "I wasn't around much," Raj admitted. "I worked too many jobs, missed too many birthdays. I thought I was providing. But what she really wanted was me." There was pain in those words. Not the kind that flares suddenly, but the kind that lingers like an old injury, always aching, always there. "Have you tried to reach out?" Sundar asked. "I did," Raj said, his voice soft. "Once. I sent her a letter. No reply. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she's better off." Sundar didn't know what to say. He could build algorithms, lead teams of thousands, launch innovations. That changed the world, but this was different. This was real life. Messy, tender, unpredictable. He stepped out of the car, but paused before closing the door. "Would you let me help you?" "Yes." Raj looked at him through the mirror. "Help me how?" "I don't know yet," Sundar said honestly. "But this isn't right. Someone like you shouldn't be sleeping in a car." Raj didn't answer. He gave a faint smile, then nodded. Sundar closed the door and walked toward the building, already pulling out his phone, already thinking of ways to make calls, find resources, reach out to connections. He didn't see the black SUV parked 2 blocks down. He didn't see the camera lens poking out from a slightly lowered window. And he didn't know that someone was listening. Asterisk later that afternoon. While Sundar sat in a conference room filled with charts, graphs, and strategy decks, Raj sat alone in the parking lot. He didn't drive home. There was no home to drive to. Instead, he sipped from a thermos of lukewarm tea, leaned his head back, and stared at the ceiling of the car like it might someday offer answers. He thought of his daughter. Her name was Arti. She would be 27 now, probably living in another state, maybe married, maybe a mother herself. He wondered if she still played the piano. If she still kept that chipped photo frame on her desk, the one with their old family picture, taken during a summer trip to Yosemite. That had been one of the last good memories. Before everything started falling apart, he remembered the night his wife had told him the diagnosis. Stage 4. The doctors had said, aggressive. They had said months, not years. He had taken more shifts after that, driving late into the night, delivering packages, anything to cover the bills. But in doing so, he had missed the last moments, and he knew Artie had never forgiven him for that. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and then the knock came dot sharp. 2 taps on the window. Raj flinched. He turned, expecting security or maybe a curious employee, but what he saw instead sent a jolt through his chest that it was a man in a dark jacket, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. He didn't smile. "You're Raj, right?" The man asked. Raj nodded slowly, rolling down the window a few inches. "Yes?" The man leaned in slightly. "You've been talking to Sundar Pichai?" Raj's heartbeat quickened. "I drive him every day." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Just wanted to make sure you knew. People like you should know their place, not get too comfortable." Raj stiffened. "I don't understand." The man took a small step back and tapped on the roof of the car twice. Just a friendly reminder. And then he walked away. Asterisk. Raj sat frozen for several seconds, the hair on the back of his neck rising. Who was that man? How did he know his name? Why did he care about what he told Sundar? He looked toward the Google building in the distance. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly. Something was happening, and it was bigger than he had. Asterisk shadows. On the road, the rain came in steady sheets that night, whispering against the windshield like 1,000 quiet warnings. Headlights flickered across wet pavement as the black sedan moved through San Francisco's narrow streets, the glow of the city dampened by the mist clinging to every surface. Inside the car, the usual calm was gone. Silence still sat between Sundar and Raj, but now it pulsed with fear, thick and alive. Sundar sat forward, leaning toward the front, his brow furrowed. "Raj," he said, "tell me exactly what happened." Raj tightened his hands around the steering wheel. He didn't want to tell the story again. Even thinking about it made his skin crawl. But he also knew this wasn't something he could face alone. "He knew my name," Raj said, voice low. "He knew I'd been talking to you. He didn't threaten me, not directly, but it was the way he said it. Like I wasn't supposed to get too close." Sundar leaned back slowly, his mind already racing. This wasn't a random encounter. Someone had been watching them, listening, and now they'd made their presence known. But why? What could they possibly want from Raj? The car rolled to a stop outside Sundar's building. He didn't get out immediately. Instead, he stared out at the quiet street, thinking hard. In his world, secrets were currency. He'd seen how powerful people used whispers to break down trust, how they protected their image at any cost. And yet, this felt different. Darker. "Did you recognize him?" Sundar asked. Raj shook his head. Never seen him before. But he wasn't just some stranger. He looked like he belonged somewhere, like someone sent him. Sundar took a breath and turned to Raj with a steadiness he didn't entirely feel. "I want to help you. But if someone's watching us, we need to be careful. This isn't just about a man sleeping in his car anymore." Raj nodded, but his expression didn't change. Something inside him had shifted. For years, he had lived in the shadows, unnoticed. And now, just as someone finally saw him, the shadows were looking back. Over the next few days, everything changed. Sundar didn't tell his team what was happening. Not yet. He moved through meetings, product reviews, investor calls with his usual calm. But underneath the surface, he was building something else entirely. He made discreet phone calls, reached out to old friends in security, combed through old records, trying to find anything that connected Raj to something or someone who would want to scare him into silence. He also started spending more time with Raj. No more silent rides. No more walls. Sundar asked questions, and Raj answered piece by piece, like stones being lifted from a riverbed. They talked about his daughter, Artie, and the years he had spent working multiple jobs to support her. They talked about his wife, Mira, who had loved gardening and taught Raj how to fold clothes so precisely that to this day, He still did. In her way. One evening, as they drove through Golden Gate Park, Raj opened up more than usual. She was everything good in my life, he said, voice thick with memory. When the cancer came, she was the one who comforted me. Imagine that, the one who was dying, comforting me. The way Raj spoke about Meera made Sundar's throat tighten. This wasn't just a man who had lost his home. He had lost his world. It had somehow kept going, kept driving, kept surviving. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, Raj pulled over near a quiet overlook. For a long time, neither man spoke. I didn't think anyone would ever notice me again. Raj said at last. Not really. I'm just part of the background, invisible, and maybe that was easier. But now that someone's looking, I don't know if I should be grateful or afraid. Sundar didn't respond immediately. He understood that kind of fear. Not the fear of physical danger, but the deeper kind, the fear of being seen too late. Of being known when there's nothing left to protect. You're not invisible, Sundar finally said. And you shouldn't have to live like this. Raj nodded slowly, eyes glistening. But just as the moment settled, Sundar's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He opened it, expecting spam or a calendar reminder. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. A photo of him sitting in the car with Raj, taken from across the street. Beneath it. Just 4 words. You're making a mistake. That night, Sundar didn't sleep. He sat by his window, the city lights casting long shadows across the floor. He kept staring at the message, the angle of the photo, the clarity of it. Someone had been close. Close enough to see them clearly. To capture a moment that wasn't supposed to mean anything to the world, but apparently it did. He tried to make sense of it. What mistake? Helping Raj? Listening to a man who had done nothing but survive with quiet dignity? Sundar couldn't understand it, and that made it worse. He called in a favor the next day. A contact he hadn't spoken to in years. A man named Vivek, who once worked in corporate risk analysis but now ran a private intelligence firm. I need to know who's watching us, Sundar said over the phone. I need you to dig deep. Vivek didn't ask many questions. He just said, send me everything you've got. Within 2 hours, Vivek had something. Your driver, Raj Malhotra, his name came up in a case 10 years ago. Small company called Next Tech AI. Early stage machine learning firm. They filed for bankruptcy after an internal security breach. Sundar sat up, and there was a whistleblower. Anonymous. Someone leaked documents showing Nextech's. Models were built using stolen data, massive fraud. The company collapsed. But the whistleblower was never named publicly. There were rumors that the person was a contractor, someone in logistics or transport. Sundar's breath caught. You think it was Raj? I think someone does, Vivek said. And someone's making sure he stays quiet. That evening, Sundar confronted Raj. They sat in the car outside his building. Rain tapping on the roof again, like a quiet drumbeat of memory. Did you used to work for a company called Nextech? Sundar asked. Raj, single quotes, his face didn't change, but his hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Yes, he said, briefly. I drove their executive team. Were you the whistleblower? Raj turned, met Sundar's eyes. I never wanted to be. But they were building something that wasn't theirs. Stealing from small developers. Covering their tracks. I leaked one email chain. Just one. Thought maybe it would stop them. Instead, it destroyed everything. And you? They never found out it was me. Or I thought they didn't. Sundar leaned back, exhaling slowly. Someone knows now. Raj looked out at the night, his voice barely a whisper. Maybe they always did. Asterisk voices from the past rain had become thunder by the time Raj and Sundar sat motionless in the black sedan, the voice on the radio still echoing in their ears. Outside, the figure under the street lamp hadn't moved, as if made of stone, watching them with the eerie patience of someone who knew they wouldn't run. The city around them continued as usual, horns honking, lights flickering, pedestrians hurrying past. Heads tucked under umbrellas, but inside that car, time had frozen. Sundar reached for the volume dial, but the radio had already gone dead. Static gave way to silence. No music, no voice, no signal. It was as if someone had taken control of the car's systems for just long enough to send a message, and then vanished without a trace. Raj stared at the figure outside. "He's not just watching," he said slowly. "He wants us to know he's watching." Sundar leaned closer to the window, trying to make out the stranger's face. But the hood cast a shadow that swallowed any detail. The man, or whoever he was, stood perfectly still. Arms by his sides, head slightly tilted, like he was studying them then, as if obeying an invisible cue. The figure turned and walked away into the night. Neither Sundar nor Raj spoke for several moments. The only sound was the dull patter of rain on the roof. When Raj finally tried the ignition again, the engine started without hesitation. The radio stayed off. They drove in silence until they were far from Sundar's neighborhood, the city fading behind them. Finally, Raj pulled over in a quiet alley behind a closed bookstore, killing the engine. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the wheel. "I thought this was behind me," Raj said. "I thought if I disappeared, kept my head down, never told anyone, it would stay buried." Sundar didn't reply right away. He looked at Raj, not just as a driver anymore, not even just as a man who had become a friend, but as someone who was tangled in something bigger, something deep, something dangerous. "You were the whistleblower," Sundar said, not as a question, but as a statement. Raj nodded slowly. "I leaked internal emails, contracts, datasets. They were building AI models using stolen medical records, private data from patients, most of them from small rural clinics. No one would have known if they looked closely. But I overheard things during drives, saw things I wasn't supposed to see. One day I found a file on the back seat by accident, forgotten after a late night meeting. When I read it, I couldn't ignore it." "What happened after the leak?" Sundar asked. "They collapsed," Raj said. "Investors pulled out. The founders were investigated, but it all happened quietly. They blamed a rogue employee, said it was a mistake. No one ever found out it was me, or so I thought." He looked out the window, the rain beginning to ease. "I lost my job a week later. Unrelated, they said. Company restructured. I tried to find other work, but doors kept closing. Slowly, silently. Even cab companies wouldn't hire me. It was like someone put my name on a list, a quiet blacklisting. No one ever said it out loud, but they knew." "You never told your daughter?" Sundar asked gently. "How could I?" Raj said. Artie was still grieving her mother. She was angry with me already. If I told her I was jobless, possibly being followed, and part of something that might put her at risk, she would have run even further. Sundar was quiet for a long time. Then he asked the question he'd been holding back. "Do you think someone's trying to finish what they started?" Raj gave a small, tired laugh. "I think someone's trying to make sure I stay quiet. Maybe they always have." The next morning, Sundar sat alone in his office. The view outside was beautiful glass towers glittering in the sun, the bay visible in the distance. But his eyes were on the screen in front of him where Vivek had sent another message. "You're right, it was Raj. And someone else knows." "It? The company's founders? They vanished. New identities, new companies. But their backers, they're still around. Private investors, powerful ones, and they don't forget." Sundar leaned back in his chair. So this wasn't just about a data leak. It was about reputations, about money, about power. And Raj had quietly stood in the way of all of it. Until now, they had let him drift, maybe hoping poverty and time would erase him. But once Sundar, a high-profile CEO, got involved, the equation changed. Helping Raj turned a forgotten story into a potential scandal. A man like Sundar publicly lifting up a former whistleblower. It would attract headlines and enemies. 2 days later, everything escalated. Raj didn't show up for his morning shift. No message. No call. No answer. Sundar waited 30 minutes, then an hour. He tried calling again. Nothing. A knot formed in his stomach. By noon, he had a team combing through surveillance footage near Raj's usual sleeping spot behind the gym. Nothing. The car was gone. It wasn't until 3 p.m. that a security officer at Google sent him a strange message. Someone left an envelope for you. No name, no return address. Sundar rushed to the front desk. The envelope was plain, sealed with tape, and heavy. Too heavy for just papers. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was Raj's watch. The same one he always wore. Old, scratched, held together by a fraying leather strap. Beneath it, a photograph. Artie got sitting in a cafe, laughing with friends. The image was recent. Written in thick marker across the bottom were 4 words. Tay out, or she disappears. A line in the sand. Office windows reflected the fading afternoon light, but inside everything felt cold and still. Sundar Pichai stood in his private conference room, staring down at the items on the table. Raj's battered old wristwatch, a printed photo of RT smiling unaware in a busy cafe, and a black phone screen that had just shown him the unimaginable. He could still hear the voice. You should have left him in the car, Sundar. No threats, no raised volume, just calm. Practice control. Like this wasn't the first time the speaker had delivered a message like this. Someone had taken Raj. And now they were using his daughter as leverage to keep Sundar from digging deeper. It was a message tailored not just to intimidate, but to paralyze. But Sundar wasn't paralyzed. He was angry. Beneath the surface calm he was known for. The careful words, there was something rising. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was moral. Raj had lived quietly, humbly, asking for nothing. He had exposed something corrupt, and in return, he had lost everything. And now, he was being threatened again. Just for being noticed. Sundar couldn't accept that. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Get Vivek on the line, he told his assistant. Within minutes, Vivek's voice crackled through the speaker. They made a move, Sundar said. They have Raj, and they're watching his daughter. Vivek didn't sound surprised. I told you, these people play dirty. They don't care how small the spark is. If there's a chance it lights a fire, they'll stamp it out hard. We need to find him, Sundar said. I'll start tracing the video metadata, Vivek replied. But they're smart. It might take time. We don't have time, Sundar said. And he was right. As night fell. Sundar left the office through the basement exit, a rare move. He was wearing plain clothes, no driver, no assistant, no one tracking his every move. Just a single destination in mind, an old warehouse space his team had identified near the city's edge. They had picked up faint wireless signals there. Earlier in the day, something that could have been used to broadcast the video. He pulled up a block away and approached on foot. The streets were empty, the industrial buildings casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks. It felt like the part of the city the world forgot, where deals were made in silence, and people disappeared without anyone noticing. He stopped, outside a rusted gate. His heart was pounding, but his steps were calm. He wasn't a spy, he wasn't trained for this. But yet real power. And for once, it wasn't in money or platforms or policies. It was in choosing not to look away. He pushed the gate open, stepped into the dark. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit by a single dangling bulb that swung gently, casting shifting light. Across the empty space, crates lined the walls. Old machinery stood silent in the corners. And in the center, a chair. Empty. No ropes. No signs of struggle. But a phone sat on the floor beside it. As he approached, the phone lit up with motion, its screen flickering to life. A live video feed appeared. RT. Alone. In a hotel room. Pacing. No sound. A second later, a message appeared on the screen. Leave the building. Walk away. Tell no one. This ends here. Below the text, a countdown. 10 minutes. Sundar stared at the phone. This was their deal. Leave Raj. Abandon the truth. And Artie lives. Stay involved, and the consequences would be on him. He was being forced to choose between helping a friend and protecting an innocent. But Sundar knew something they didn't. He didn't believe in choosing between the two. He believed in breaking. The whole system that forced those choices in the first place. Back in his apartment. Sundar launched the plan. By morning. Google's private security division, one of the most sophisticated in the corporate world, was on full alert. But working in complete secrecy, no press, no leaks, no paper trails. Vivek had traced the video to a secondary location outside Oakland. Drones were deployed. Agents watched from unmarked vehicles. Something wasn't right. When they arrived, they found a different feed, pre-recorded, looped. The real location had already been moved. Someone was playing with them, showing how far ahead they were. And then, just when Sundar feared they were losing the trail for good, a twist. Artie called him. Her voice was shaking. Someone was following me, she said. But I think I lost them. Where are you? Sundar asked urgently. Somewhere near Palo Alto. I ducked into a library. It was the only public place open. Sundar's team tracked her signal within seconds and got to her just minutes. Later. She was safe. But Raj wasn't. Artie sat across from Sundar in a private room, eyes full of confusion and pain. She hadn't seen her father in over 4 years. And now, here she was, pulled into something far bigger than anything she understood. Why would anyone want to hurt him? She asked. Sundar looked at her for a long moment, then told her the truth. All of it. About the about the stolen data. About the people who wanted Raj erased from history. Artie broke down. He never told me, she whispered. Just disappeared. And I thought he left us. He was trying to protect you, Sundar said, even from himself. Artie buried her face in her hands. I want to see him, please. I want to talk to him. And Sundar made a silent promise to himself in that moment. He would make that happen, no matter what it cost, by the end of that week. Vivek's team found something, a thermal imaging signature from a refrigerated freight container near the docks. The area had been rented under a shell company's name that connected through 5 layers of legal tricks back to one of the original investors in Nextech AI. It was a long shot, but they moved fast. As dawn broke over the bay, Sundar stood silently in a bulletproof SUV, watching his team surround the container. His fingers were clenched at his side, every breath shallow. A crowbar cracked open the rusted lock. The doors swung wide, and inside, sitting against the wall, blinking slowly against the sudden light, was Raj. Alive. Weakened. But alive. Asterisk the weight of truth. Early morning light spilled over the edge of the bay, casting long golden reflections across the water. From high above the city, the world looked calm, peaceful, as if nothing beneath the surface could be broken, bruised, or burning. But for Sundar Pichai, peace was a distant echo. He stood alone in a quiet room at the top of the Google campus, staring out the window with his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Behind him, a tablet rested on the table, screen glowing with the file Vivek had just sent. His heart was beating faster than it should have, not with fear but with purpose. With fire. The document was detailed. Too detailed. Asterisk. A new company had been quietly formed in Silicon Valley. No press, no product, no public statement, but it was real. Funded by a network of investors who had disappeared after Nextech fell, the same people who had tried to silence Raj. Their aim wasn't to build a better AI or bring innovation to the world. Their goal was control. The new company was developing a system capable of large-scale behavior modeling, one that could predict public reaction to news, protests, elections, policy changes. And more than predict, it could influence. They were creating something that could bend truth. And they had just put Sundar's name at the top of their internal containment list. Not to kill, not yet, but to discredit, to dismantle him from within, down the hallway. Raj sat in a recovery room, a warm blanket around his shoulders. His face was thinner, his eyes still tired, but he was no longer the man curled in silence inside a shipping container. Now he sat with his back straight, speaking softly to Artie. who held his hand with a mix of disbelief and quiet forgiveness. I thought I lost you, she whispered. You didn't, Raj replied. I lost myself, but I think I found my way back. Sundar entered quietly, and both father and daughter looked up. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then Raj spoke. You could have walked away. I almost did, Sundar admitted. But something in me knew that helping you wasn't the problem. Not helping you was, Raj nodded slowly. What happens now? Sundar walked over and sat beside him. They've gone too far. This time, we bring everything into the light. The next 48 hours were a blur of movement, planning, and risk. Sundar didn't sleep. He called meetings under the radar. He used encrypted systems, hand-picked teams, and shut out anyone who couldn't be trusted. He crafted a message not just for his company, or the media, or the board, but for the world. He had made a decision. No more secrets. He was going to tell the full story. About Nextech, about the whistleblower, about the corruption that had seeped into the heart of the tech world, and about how, for too long, those in power had hidden behind buzzwords like innovation and progress to justify betrayal. The broadcast went live at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Got a press release. Not a tweet. A live stream. Sundar stood alone in front of a camera. No notes, no teleprompter, no polished script. Just the truth. Tonight, he began, I want to tell you a story. It's not one you'll find in any shareholder letter. It's not about market share or earnings. It's about a man named Raj. And it's about the kind of world we've built, one where telling the truth can cost you everything. He spoke for 21 minutes. Slowly, clearly, with emotion, but without spectacle. He told them about Raj's life. About the stolen data, the buried scandal, the threats, the fear. And he told them about what had come next, how those same forces had not disappeared, but simply changed their mask. They had regrouped, rebranded, and begun again. Only now, their power was even more dangerous. We cannot call ourselves innovators, Sundar said, voice steady. If we allow systems that punish truth and reward silence, we cannot build a future worth living in unless we build it on a foundation of respect, humility, and honesty. The stream ended with his final words. I stand with Raj. And I stand with anyone who ever been made to feel invisible for doing the right thing. If that costs me something, so be it. The fallout came quickly. The next morning, headlines exploded across the globe. CEO speaks out in viral broadcast, exposes buried scandal. Corruption in Silicon Valley. Whistleblower Raj Malhotra named in tech industry cover-up survived kidnapping. Silencing campaign. Truth wins. Sundar Pichai breaks silence. On power, privilege, and what comes next. Google's board called an emergency meeting. Some were furious. Others were speechless. But the public was on his side. So were his employees. And most importantly, people were waking up. Thousands began sharing their own stories. Stories of retaliation, abuse, intimidation. It wasn't just about Raj anymore. This had become a movement. In the weeks that followed, federal investigations reopened the Nextech case. Several former investors were subpoenaed. One was arrested trying to flee the country. Raj was given full protection, along with his daughter. Sundar used his own resources to ensure they had a place to live, a small home not far from the water, where peace came with waves and not whispers. Raj never returned to driving. Instead, he began speaking at schools, in interviews, on panels, about integrity, about resilience, and about the hidden cost of doing the right thing. His voice, once buried under silence and shame, had become something powerful, something real. He wasn't invisible anymore. On a quiet Sunday morning, Sundar visited Raj at his new home. They sat outside, watching RT tend to a small garden, lavender, mint, and tiny tomato plants already sprouting. She's happier, Raj said. I haven't seen her smile like that since Mira was alive. Sundar smiled gently. She has you back. I lost so much time, Raj said. But I suppose the time we have left is still worth something. Sundar nodded. It's worth everything. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that no longer carried weight, only warmth. And then Raj looked at him. Why did you really help me? Sundar turned to him. Because one day, he said quietly, it might be me in that car. And I'd want someone to see me.